everyone, welcome to or welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lena and I make college and book related content here on YouTube. If you are into one of those things or both of those things, I would love for you to subscribe. Today I will be sharing with you all the Black History Month book tag. I saw the original tag, I think it was like a couple weeks ago. On Books by Lane's channel, and I will link the original tag below. I was really interested in this tag and thought it would be a perfect tag to do during this month, obviously. And when they encouraged everyone and anyone to do this tag, I really wanted to do it and share with you all some stellar titles that I've been reading this month as well as in past months. I know Black History Month can be a little controversial, partly because we should all be learning about Black history 12 months out of the year. We should all be reading books by Black authors and Black stories all 12 months of the year, and that is 100% true, but I also believe vehemently that if Black History Month is what teaches you to be intentional about your reading and it's what helps you actually learn more about Black history and really educate yourself or re-educate yourself, then that is really, really great. From my own experience, I have not always read the most diverse books, but once I started to be intentional about what books I was reading, what authors I was reading, the kinds of stories I was reading, my entire reading world opened up enormously, and I highly recommend doing so and being intentional in your reading. For me, reading books, whether they are nonfiction and they're about Black history or they're just stories that really encapsulate different and a huge variety of Black experiences in this country and other countries, it really helps me to educate myself and re-educate myself as a white person who lives in a very white state and has attended predominantly white schools my whole life. This is very, very important for me to be a better citizen and member of this society and world. I'm also very cognizant of the fact that I am a white person who should not be filling up the entire space with my voice and my thoughts. That's why I was a little hesitant to do this tag, because I don't want to take up too much airspace, but I really would like to share some of the stellar titles I've read this month and in past months, so I decided to do so. That being said, please just Google this tag, look up this tag on YouTube, check out some amazing Black booktubers and just Black creators in general. There is so much. Just like books, your world will open up enormously when you try to diversify and just look at the bigger picture of this world. That was probably a long intro, so let's get into it. The first question is, what is a book that everyone should read during Black History Month? Include one title of fiction and one title of nonfiction. For my fiction title, I selected Red at the Bone by Jacqueline Woodson. Jacqueline Woodson honestly is a must-read. She is an incredible author. I love all of her works. I read Red at the Bone this past August and I really, really enjoyed it. This book starts in 2001 with Melody wearing a special dress for her Sweet 16. She's at her grandparents' brownstone in Brooklyn, New York. This is very special because this dress was meant to be worn 16 years earlier by Melody's mother, but this ceremony and celebration never actually happened. This story is a multi-generational story. It looks at so many different themes and important things, including gentrification, class, racism, sexuality, gender, education, class status. Like, there is so much to unpack within this book. It's also quite a small novel. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I love all of Jacqueline Woodson's work, but I thought this book was really poignant to read during this month because it is multi-generational and it has so many different themes to unpack and explore. The writing is also really beautiful and the family dynamic really gets to me. I'm someone who loves characters, someone who loves families and relationships within families, and this book has it all and so much more. My nonfiction recommendation is Stamped from the Beginning: The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America by Ibram X. Kendi. I read this book in July, I think. It's quite a big book. This book spans a huge amount of time in history in America, and it uses 5 different historical figures as the anchor points. 5 historical figures are Cotton Mather, Thomas Jefferson, William Lloyd Garrison, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Angela Davis, and then there's an epilogue that finishes out this book. It has 3 different perspectives: anti-racist, racist, and assimilationist. I found this book very, very helpful in my research and education and re-education. I think Ibram X. Kendi is very, very talented in the way that he presents the work. It's very accessible. I really, really enjoyed it. Honestly, what I really enjoyed in this book is I'm trying to read more nonfiction, but I'm not a huge nonfiction person. But what I thought was really interesting is Ibram X. Kendi did not shy away from critiquing and criticizing really famous historical and monumental figures in history. He was totally comfortable praising their anti-racist work or thoughts or speeches and things like that, but he had no problem critiquing and saying that this is maybe something they weren't as successful in or did not communicate as well or was simply wrong, racist, assimilationist. And I found that really interesting because it really gave a full picture of history and did not just gloss it over and say like, this is a bad person, this is a good person, bad, good, bad, good. Clearly with Ibram X. Kendi having 3 different groups, this is more complicated than just good and bad. So I highly recommend this book and I really, really enjoyed it. The second question for this book tag is, which Black booktuber would you recommend and why? And there are so many stellar Black booktubers, but if I had to choose one, I would choose Ashley at the Bookish Realm. I have mentioned her channel before and I just love everything about her channel. There are so many things that draw me to her and her channel. She gives stellar book recommendations with amazing reviews. They're so well thought out and crafted, and I can really pick up from a book if I would be interested in reading it. Even if she loved the book or hated it, I can tell from her review if I think I would be interested in reading it. The books that she reads greatly influence my TBR, and I am always so impressed with the discussions and the comments and everything she has to say, and also the people that watch her video have so many interesting things to say in the comments as well. She has a great insight into so many different topics, and her work as a librarian has allowed her to make really, really great recommendations. I am always so impressed at her recommendations, and I love so many of the books that she has recommended. I also think it's really interesting to hear about her work as a librarian. Her daughter is really cute. That's a side note, but her daughter is really cute. And then an odd thing that draws me to her is her voice. I find her voice just so comforting and just so relaxing. I just love listening to her videos, and just even her voice just really gets me. I definitely recommend her channel and I will be linking it below. The third question is, what is your favorite book written by a Black author from an African country? And for this, I have selected The Death of Vivek Oji by Akwakwé Emezi. They are originally from Nigeria, and this is the first book I've read by them, but I've heard really great things about their other works. This book also takes place in Nigeria, and it starts with a mother opening her door and finding her dead son wrapped in fabric at her door. Son is, of course, Vivek Oji, and this whole novel follows the story of what led up to Vivek's death, as well as all of the events surrounding and what happened after. This is an extremely powerful book. I give this book 5 out of 5 stars. It is so beautiful and so heart-wrenching at the same time. The prose is to die for. It is so well written. Akwakwé Emezi really has a supreme talent with their writing. Vivek as a character is so interesting to read, and his cousin Osita, their relationship is beautiful as well, and just the family dynamic, again, the family dynamic was really interesting to read about, and I just think this is such an important read because it also touches on so many important themes. This offers a wonderful discussion and dialogue upon gender, and I highly recommend it. It also has a lot of different cultural things that are part of Nigeria, which I also think is interesting, and I love the cover. Definitely one of my favorite books that I read in 2020. And the fourth question is, what is your favorite Black classic? And for this, I would have to say The Color Purple by Alice Walker. This was actually the last book that I just finished, and oh my gosh, this book is everything. The book follows Celie as she starts writing letters to God about all of the horrible things that she is experiencing. A young woman growing up in early 20th century Georgia, and there's a lot that she has to deal with and is dealing with. She first starts writing to God, but as the novel progresses, she begins to write to her sister Nettie, and there is a huge cast of characters within this book. This is one of the few books that both of my sisters have read before me, and I was the last one out of us to get to it. I give this book 5 out of 5 stars. Clearly, I mean, I love it. I just thought that Celie as a main character, while many of the things that she's experiences and has to go through is incredibly hard to read and process, she is so resilient and so strong and so powerful, and her inner strength is just something to be admired. This book also really explores what it means to be a Black woman in America, specifically during this time. When I read Native Son this past summer, I really enjoyed it, but I was really, really bothered by the way Bessie hit Bigger's girlfriend was treated and the way her narrative was also treated within the story. I found that quite disturbing, to say the least, and it's something that is often not discussed, the specific experience and intersectionality that Black women have to deal with of racism and sexism. This book is challenging to read. It has some beautiful female friendships and relationships that are so wonderful to read about. And as I said, even though it's challenging to read, it's uplifting at the same time, as you can see that the resilience that Celia and many other characters exhibit, and also the strength that many of them have. I also think it's very interesting. People have critiqued that there's no positive male representation, specifically Black male representation, within this novel, and I disagree. I think this book, that was not the intention, and I think that this book has so much to think about. Alice Walker was not just trying to talk about one thing in this book. There are so many things to think about, especially there were the moments when she opens up to the wider world and looks at missionary work on the African continent, and when she looks at the white presence in these counties and towns, and the being a nanny for them, as well as prison and so many different things. This book is so amazing and I cannot recommend it enough. Fifth question is, what movie, book to movie, or documentary would you recommend watching during Black History Month? And for that, I would say 13th. This movie was directed by Ava DuVernay, I believe, and it is all about the 13th Amendment and really how it set up this version of modern day slavery, which is mass incarceration. It came out in 2016, I believe, and when I watched this documentary, I learned so much. I've watched it 3 times, and each time I learned something new from it. They have interviewed so many stellar scholars and writers that I have looked into more since watching it, and this is something that when I watched it, I immediately thought that they should be showing this in schools. It is so important for people who live a sheltered life and have no real concept, and who think that just because we had our first Black president means that everything is okay, or that I'm not racist, so I'm not part of the problem. I just thought this movie was incredibly powerful and also well done. The 6th question is, what is on your TBR for this Black History Month? And I am reading currently The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. This ties in really well to 13th. It came out before 13th. It was first published in 2010, but I have the 10th anniversary edition, so it also has an additional preface for this edition. Which is really interesting to read because it's in 2020, which is after Trump has been elected. I think this book is really well done. I am currently on page 74, I think, or 73, which means I finished the first chapter. So I've read the preface and then the other preface and then the first chapter. This book is very accessible. It's very straightforward. I really appreciated that Michelle Alexander just said straight up that this is specifically about Black men. She is not erasing the experiences of other individuals from other communities and other groups that are just as directly impacted by mass incarceration in this country. The book was on the New York Times bestsellers list for 250 weeks, and if that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what will. I think this book is really well done. You can't shy away from the truth. It has a really great bibliography at the end with so many different sources to look into. I also really appreciate the way that Michelle Alexander has organized this book. I think it's really smart and well done. And it's material like this, or 13th, or Stamped from the Beginning, this kind of nonfiction that I think would be so powerful and so important to read in high schools like mine where I went to, because I think that this just lays it out in terms that we aren't used to hearing and that should be more prominent, and I definitely think that this should be required reading. And then the book that I hope to read next this month is Memorial by Brian Washington. This follows the story of Mike and Benson. Benson is a black daycare teacher and Mike is a Japanese American chef at a Mexican restaurant. I'm not quite sure if they would label it as dating, but they are definitely together. And then Mike receives word that his father is dying back in Japan, so he decides to go back to Japan. Their relationship is also at an odd point where they're not quite sure why they're still together. While all of this is going on, Mike's mother has actually shown up and is now living with Benson back in Texas. So Mike undergoes a whole new experience and world over in Japan, and Benson is also learning a lot of new things in Texas as he lives with Mike's mother. This book is supposed to be a story of family and love. I've heard really great things about Bryan Washington and I'm looking forward to reading this next. Seventh question and the last question is, which new releases are you looking forward to by Black authors for this year? This is a really tricky question for me because, as I've said in previous videos, I struggle to keep on top of what new releases are coming out. If it's a book in a series, then I'm pretty much aware of when it's going to be coming out, but if it's brand new books or debut books or just standalone books that I have no idea or new series that are starting, it's hard for me to be aware of them. I just am not as on top of that. Also partly because my local library is always a little bit behind on the new books. That being said, I have heard of some really great books. One of them already came out. It's called 400 Souls, A Community History of African America from 1619 to 2019. This was edited by Ibram X. Kendi, and he basically assigned all of these Black authors a different 5-year sections where they could write about that 5 years of African American or Black history within their time, and they could do it however they wanted to. I think this book sounds amazing and I'm really excited to read it. The book I've heard about is Witches Steeped in Gold by Sinan and Smart. This book sounds really interesting. This follows the story of two different witches, Ireya and Jasmine, and Ireya is in prison waiting for freedom and Jasmine is supposed to be dying to help her mother become stronger. These two witches are supposed to be sworn enemies, but they are brought together in an alliance when there's a threat to both of them. It's a fantasy debut and it's also Jamaican inspired, which I think is really interesting and I'm looking forward to that. That is all for the Black History Month book tag. Again, anyone and everyone who would like to do this tag, you should definitely go for it and do it. Check out the original tag below and any other tags that creators have done on BookTube. Thank you so much for watching today's video and I will see you all next week.